The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It came down in thin, silvery sheets over the small desert town of Deming, New Mexico, blurring the outlines of the distant mountains and turning the dirt roads into slow rivers of brown water. Beneath the muted neon sign of the Sundown Motel, a lone woman stood in the dim orange glow, her suitcase dripping beside her boots. Her name was Elena Hart. To anyone passing by, she was just another weary traveler, maybe running from a broken heart or an overdue rent check. But the way she watched the shadows, how her gaze flicked toward every sound, the way she stood slightly angled from the door, ready to run at the first sign of danger, gave her away. She wasn't passing through. She was hiding inside her room. The air conditioner rattled, blowing lukewarm air. Elena sat at the edge of the bed, her damp hair clinging to her neck, her breath slow and uneven. On the bedside table, an old prepaid phone lay silent beside a half-empty bottle of motel whiskey. She stared at it, willing it not to ring. The name she had used to check in wasn't hers. Her ID said Rachel Mendez, a name printed on a fake Arizona driver's license she'd bought for $400 in a gas station bathroom outside of Tucson. The man who'd sold it to her had warned her not to go south again. She hadn't planned to, but the past has a way of tracing footprints even through the desert. She'd been on the run for 8 months. Before that, before everything went wrong, she'd been a nurse in San Antonio, working long nights in a trauma ward. The man who had changed her life forever had walked in bleeding from a gunshot wound to the shoulder. His name was Marco Vega. At first, she hadn't known who he was. He'd smiled at her through the pain, said she had a steady hand and eyes that made a man forget where he was. She'd told him to save the charm for someone who wasn't sewing up a bullet hole. But something about him, his composure, the way he never flinched, the shadow behind his calm, had pulled her in by the time she discovered the truth. That he was the head of a cartel operating between Texas and northern Mexico. It was too late. She was in too deep, too close, too entangled in his quiet, burning world. And now, months later, she was still paying for it. The rain intensified, hammering the metal roof. Elena got up, pacing, her bare feet cold on the tile. She pulled back the curtain slightly. Across the parking lot, under the buzzing streetlight, a black SUV idled. Her heart lurched. She dropped the curtain, stepping back. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." The vehicle didn't move. Through the curtain slit, she saw only the faint glow of a cigarette, then a spark as someone flicked ash out the window. Her pulse drummed in her ears. It could be anyone. It had to be anyone. Maybe a traveler stuck in the storm. Maybe a trucker catching sleep before another long haul. But deep down, she knew better. She checked her bag. Passport, cash, burner phone, a small revolver she barely knew how to use. Her mind raced through her escape routes. Out the back door, across the dry wash, into the hills. But the rain had turned the dirt to sludge. She'd leave tracks everywhere. Then, a knock on the door. Soft, almost polite. Elena froze. Another knock, firmer this time. "Miss Mendez?" A man's voice. Deep, calm American accent. Not Marco's, but something in it carried that same quiet authority. She swallowed hard, glancing toward the gun. "Who is it?" "Maintenance," he said. "We had reports your heater's not working." Elena's eyes flicked to the thermostat. It hummed steadily, the air warm against her arms. "Wrong room," she said, trying to sound casual. A pause. Then almost a whisper. "Elena." Her blood went cold. She backed away slowly, gun in hand. "You've got the wrong person." The door handle turned. Once. Twice. Locked. "Elena, open the door. I'm not here to hurt you." She aimed the revolver at the door, her finger trembling on the trigger. "If you take one more step, I'll—" The door burst open with a splintering crack. She fired. The gun kicked hard against her hand, the shot echoing through the tiny room. A man ducked inside, black coat soaked from the rain. His hand reached out, grabbing her wrist before she could fire again. The revolver hit the floor with a dull thud. "Elena, stop!" He shouted. She struggled, eyes wild. "Who are you? Who sent you?" He shoved the door closed behind him, breathing hard. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Now listen to me." Rainwater streamed from his hair, his jaw tense, his dark eyes locked on hers. He wasn't cartel muscle. His clothes were too clean-cut, his voice too measured. "Who are you?" she demanded again, backing toward the corner. He hesitated, chest rising and falling. "Name's Evan Cole, U.S. Marshal." He reached slowly into his coat, pulling out a wet leather badge holder. "You're not safe here." Elena's heart pounded so hard it hurt. "You're lying." "I'm not. Marco Vega sent men after you 2 days ago. They hid a safe house in Las Cruces. Everyone's dead." Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, to call him insane. But the look in his eyes, steady, haunted, told her he wasn't bluffing. "How do you know that?" "I was the one who found them," he said quietly. "And you're next." The storm roared outside, wind howling through the broken door frame. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Every instinct screamed not to trust him. She'd trusted one man once, and it had destroyed everything. "You can come with me," he said. "Or you can wait here for Vega's men to finish the job." Thunder cracked over the motel. Her hand trembled as she reached for the bag. "If this is a trick..." "It's not." His voice softened. "You think I don't know what it's like to run?" "I do. But you're out of time." She looked up at him, trying to read the truth behind his eyes. They were sharp, yes, but there was sorrow there too. A kind she recognized. A kind that came from losing someone you couldn't save. Finally, she nodded once. "Then let's go." Evan moved first, stepping into the rain, scanning the parking lot. The SUV was gone. Only wet asphalt and the hum of the storm remained. They hurried toward his car, a dark sedan splattered with mud. As Elena slid into the passenger seat, she glanced through the side mirror. For a moment in the distance, she thought she saw a man standing under the flickering light near the road. Tall, still, watching. Then the lightning flashed again. And he was gone. Evan gunned the engine, tires cutting through the puddles as they sped away from the sundown motel. Elena turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. "You said he sent men after me." He kept his eyes on the road. "He did." Her pulse quickened. "Then why do I feel like he already knew where I'd be?" Evan didn't answer. His jaw tightened, his fingers gripping the wheel. Outside, the desert opened before them, vast, dark, endless, and somewhere behind that rain-soaked horizon. Marco Vega smiled into the night. He had found her again. They drove through the night, the wipers barely keeping up with the desert rain. The road was a narrow scar cutting through miles of blackness, broken only by the glow of the dashboard and the pale lightning dancing on the horizon. Elena pressed her forehead to the cold glass, her reflection faint and ghost-like against the storm. She had imagined freedom differently: sunlight, quiet mornings, the scent of safety. Instead, she found herself trapped again, in motion but not free. The ghost of Marco Vega still breathing down her neck. Evan's voice cut through the hum of rain. "You should get some rest." She looked at him, exhaustion sinking into her bones. "I stopped sleeping when I started running." He didn't respond. His profile was all shadow and tension, the kind of man who carried more secrets than he ever told. "Where are we going?" she asked. "North," he said. "Safe house in Santa Fe. It's off the grid. Few people know about it." Elena traced the fog on the window with her fingertip. "Few people?" He glanced at her, understanding the implication. "I'm not one of them." The admission startled her. "You're not?" "Someone above my pay grade gave the coordinates," he said. "We just get there alive." She sank back into the seat, unease tightening her chest. The wind shifted, carrying the faint metallic scent of wet asphalt and sagebrush. Through the sheets of rain, the faint outlines of gas stations and shuttered diners appeared like ghosts of the road. Every neon flicker made her heart jolt. Every passing set of headlights felt like danger. Who were they? She asked quietly. "The ones who died in Las Cruces." He hesitated. "Federal contacts. They were trying to build a case against Vega. You were supposed to testify." Elena turned sharply. "That wasn't part of the deal. I just wanted out." Evan's gaze stayed fixed ahead. "You're the only person who can tie him to 3 murders. In San Antonio and 1 in El Paso. You saw things. The others didn't." "I didn't sign up to be a witness," she snapped. "You didn't have a choice," he said. "Not anymore." Silence stretched between them, tense and electric. Outside, outside. The storm finally began to ease. The first pale light of dawn broke over the horizon as they reached the edge of Santa Fe, the city still half asleep under a gray sky. Adobe walls glistened with rain. The air smelled of wet dust and cedar. Evan turned off the main road, heading down a narrow lane lined with juniper trees. The safe house sat at the end, a small stucco home tucked behind a wrought iron gate. It looked ordinary enough, the kind of place where someone's grandmother might live, complete with a wind chime trembling under the porch eave. Inside it was sparse but clean. 2 rooms, faded rugs, a coffee pot, and an old television that didn't seem to work. "You'll be safe here," Evan said, setting her bag down. Elena stepped inside slowly, scanning the space. It didn't feel safe. It felt like a cage with prettier walls. She looked back at him. "You're staying?" He hesitated, then nodded. "For now." He removed his jacket, revealing the shoulder holster beneath his shirt, the faint scar cutting across his collarbone. There was something deliberate about the way he moved, like a man always half ready for violence. Elena crossed her arms. "You don't trust me, do you?" Evan gave a humorless smile. "You disappeared for 8 months after Viga's operation went dark. People thought you were dead, so no, not entirely." She met his gaze, defiant. "Maybe I should have stayed dead." For a moment, the tension softened. He studied her, eyes narrowing slightly, not with suspicion, but something like regret. "You cared about him," he said quietly. "Didn't you?" The question landed like a blow. She turned away, pretending to busy herself with the window blinds. "Care isn't the right word," she murmured. "He saved me once. From someone worse. Then he became worse." The silence that followed was thick. Evan leaned against the counter. "You could have run farther, Canada, maybe Europe. Why stop here?" Elena's jaw tightened. "Because I thought he wouldn't look in a place this small." He nodded slowly. "You don't know him very well, then." Her eyes flicked toward him. "And you do?" Evan didn't answer immediately. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. It was old, worn at the edges. 2 men stood side by side in it. Marco Viga, younger, clean-shaven, smiling, and beside him, a man who looked startlingly like Evan. Elena froze. "What is that?" "My brother," he said. Name was Caleb Cole. He worked undercover in Viga's crew 5 years ago. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "What happened to him?" Evan's voice went flat. "Viga happened." He tucked the photo away again, eyes dark with a pain he clearly kept buried. "So this is personal," she said. "It's always personal." The air between them changed, less distrust now, more of a dangerous empathy. Both of them were broken by the same man, just in different ways. Hours passed. They spoke little. Elena made coffee, the bitter scent filling the quiet house. Evan checked the perimeter, always watching, always tense. The sound of the rain had faded to a steady dripping from the eaves. At noon, the phone on the counter buzzed. Evan stiffened. He answered on the second ring. "Cole." Elena watched his expression tighten as he listened. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing slightly. "Say that again." A pause. Then he hung up. "What is it?" she asked. He turned toward her slowly. "They found the SUV from last night. 15 miles south of Deming." Her stomach dropped. "And no bodies, just blood." The air went still. Evan grabbed his gun, sliding it into the holster. "Pack your things. We're moving." "Why?" "You said this place was safe." "It was," he said grimly. "Until someone told them where to look." Elena's breath caught. "You think it's me?" "I don't know." He looked at her, voice low. "But Viga always had eyes inside the system. If he knows you're alive, it's because someone on my side told him." The thought hit her harder than she expected. "Then we can't trust anyone." He gave a small, bitter smile. "Now you're getting it." They packed in silence. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the click of the safety on Evan's gun, the distant hum of thunder over the mountains. As they stepped outside, Elena paused. Across the dirt road, a silver sedan sat half-hidden behind a cluster of trees. Its windshield glistened in the weak sunlight. "Evan," she whispered. He followed her gaze, then drew his weapon. Back inside. Before they could move, the car door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a gray suit darkened by rain, his movements calm, deliberate. He held no gun, only an umbrella. "Elena Hart," he called, his voice smooth, almost friendly. You've had quite the journey. Evan raised his weapon. Stay right there. The man smiled faintly. Relax, Marshall. If I wanted to harm either of you, I wouldn't have knocked. Evan's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The man closed the umbrella, resting it on his shoulder. Name's Agent Rourke, D. You've been a hard pair to track. Elena stepped forward slightly. D, then you already know Viga's coming after me. Rourke nodded. That's exactly why I'm here. But you've both made a mistake. Evan didn't lower the gun. What mistake? Rourke's smile thinned. You think he's chasing you. He took a slow step closer. He's not. The wind picked up again, swirling dust across the road. Elena frowned. What do you mean? Rourke's gaze met hers, cold and certain. Viga's not hunting you, Elena. He's drawing you back. A chill ran through her. Evan's voice hardened. Why? Because, Rourke said quietly, you still have something that belongs to him. Elena's breath hitched. That's impossible. Then why? He asked, pulling a folded photo from his pocket and holding it out. Did he send me this? Evan snatched the photo. His face went pale. It was a picture of Elena taken from a motel security camera the same night they'd met. And standing beside her in the reflection of the glass door, barely visible but unmistakable, was Marco Viga. Watching, smiling. The silence after Rourke's revelation was brutal. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Evan stared at the photograph, the muscles in his jaw locking tight. He turned it toward Elena, the faint reflection of Marco Viga haunting the frame like a ghost that refused to die. This is impossible, she whispered. Her pulse thudded in her ears. That photo was taken 2 nights ago. Rourke nodded slowly. Which means he's closer than you think. Evan stepped forward, weapon still raised. You're saying Viga's here in New Mexico? Rourke shrugged slightly, the gesture maddeningly calm. Or near enough to make the point. You can run, Marshall, but Viga doesn't chase. He orchestrates. Elena's throat went dry. What does he want from me? I don't have anything. Rourke's gaze met hers. Don't you? She blinked, confusion hardening into anger. What are you implying? Evan cut in, voice low. You're done talking in riddles. Either you tell us what you know, or you walk away before I decide you're part of this. Rourke's smirk faded. Careful, Cole. You start pointing guns at the wrong people, you'll find yourself answering to more than Viga. The standoff stretched like a wire ready to snap. Then Rourke took a step back, raising his hands slightly. You want the truth? Fine. Viga's operation didn't collapse last year. It went underground. And the last coded transfer from his network was traced to a medical account in San Antonio. Under the name Elena Hart. Elena's breath caught. That's not possible. I didn't, whether you did or not, Rourke said, cutting her off. His money's in your name. And if there's one thing a man like Marco Viga can't forgive, it's theft. The ground tilted beneath her. She staggered back against the porch railing, gripping it to steady herself. The rain began again, soft at first, then heavier, filling the silence with its relentless rhythm. I didn't take his money, she said, almost pleading. When I left with nothing. Evan holstered his weapon but didn't take his eyes off Rourke. If Viga believes she stole from him, that's enough reason to hunt her. But why send this photo? Message, Rourke said simply. He wants her scared, desperate, predictable. Evan's jaw tightened. Then you're saying this whole thing, Las Cruces, the bodies, the safe houses, it's all to drive her out? Rourke nodded once. He doesn't want her dead. Not yet, he wants her to come to him. Elena's voice cracked. Why would I ever do that? Rourke studied her for a long moment. Then he said, almost softly, because he knows something you don't. The words sank deep. Evan frowned. What the hell does that mean? But Rourke only gave a thin smile, stepping back toward his car. You'll see. When you're ready to stop running. He climbed inside, started the engine, and disappeared down the muddy road, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust and the echo of his warning. Evan stood there for a long time, staring after him, rain soaking his hair. Then he turned to Elena. You need to tell me the truth. All of it. I told you everything, she said weakly. No, you didn't. His voice was sharp now, colder. If Viga put money in your name, it means you were part of his inner circle. That doesn't happen by accident. She met his gaze, trembling. I didn't know what he was doing. I was helping with medical paperwork for some of his people. He said it was for donations to clinics across the border. I didn't ask questions, I just wanted to help. Evan exhaled through his nose, pacing. He laundered millions through those accounts. You were the front. Her knees gave out and she sank onto the step. God. He crouched beside her, the tension in his shoulders softening just a fraction. Elena, listen to me. None of this is your fault, but if Rourke's right, Viga's setting a trap. We need to move before he closes it. She nodded, swallowing hard. Where? Somewhere he doesn't expect. They left the house before dawn, driving north along Highway 285, the road empty and endless beneath a bruised blue sky. The rain had stopped, but a cold wind scraped across the desert. Elena watched. The landscape blur past miles of sagebrush, abandoned gas stations, old signs faded by sun and time. Evan drove in silence, his focus absolute. But something in him had shifted, his calm now edged with urgency, his movements sharper, almost restless. You don't believe Rourke, do you? She asked quietly. Evan's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I believe Viga's capable of anything. And I believe Rourke's the kind of man who'd use fear to get what he wants. Which is? Evan hesitated. You. She turned sharply toward him. Me. Why? Because you're the only living link between Viga and whatever operation's still alive. You disappear, the trail dies, you talk and it burns. Her pulse quickened. You think Rourke's working for Viga? I think Rourke's working for himself, Evan said grimly. Which is worse? They reached the outskirts of Taos by afternoon. The mountains rose in the distance, dusted with early snow. Evan found a small cabin outside town quiet, tucked behind a stand of pine trees. He killed the engine and the world fell into silence again. Inside, the air smelled of pine and smoke. A stone fireplace stood cold and empty. Elena dropped her bag, rubbing her arms for warmth. You really think he'll find us here? Evan glanced around, scanning every window, every door frame. If he does, it means someone's feeding him our movements. Until I figure out who, we stay invisible. Elena sank into a chair, exhaustion heavy on her face. Invisible, she repeated. That used to sound like freedom. He looked at her for a long time, something unreadable in his eyes. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. The firelight flickered across their faces as night fell. They sat across from each other, a silence stretching between them, filled with everything they didn't say. Finally, Elena spoke. You said Viga killed your brother. Why? Evan's expression darkened. Caleb was undercover in Viga's cartel. He started sending coded reports, details about shipments, names, money. Then one day they stopped. 2 weeks later, a video surfaced online. Viga wanted us to see it. He stopped, his throat tightening. Elena's voice softened. You watched him die? Evan nodded once, and Viga smiled while he did it. She stared into the flames, her chest aching. He always smiled, even when he lied. Evan's gaze flicked to her. And you loved him anyway. The words cut deep. She looked up, tears glinting in her eyes. You don't choose who saves you. You just try to live with what it costs. Evan's face softened. He reached forward, hesitating, then brushed his fingers lightly against hers. For a moment, neither pulled away. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the shutters. Then, from somewhere beyond the trees, a faint noise metal against gravel. Evan's hand shot to his gun. Stay here. He moved toward the window, peering through the narrow gap in the curtain. 2 headlights flickered at the far end of the road, approaching slowly, deliberately. Elena stood, heart pounding. Is it Rourke? Evan didn't answer. He watched as the car stopped 100 yards from the cabin. The door opened and a figure stepped out, tall, wearing a dark coat, the wind tearing at it like wings. Even from the distance, Elena felt it. The cold, unmistakable pull of recognition. Her breath caught. Oh God! Evan turned to her. You know him? Her voice broke. It's Marco. Evan's eyes widened. That's impossible. He can't, but... She was already moving toward the door, something between terror and longing in her eyes. Elena, stop! She froze at the threshold, rain starting to fall again, slow and heavy. Marco Viga stood at the edge of the trees, his face calm, almost serene. the way it had been the first night she stitched his wound. He raised a hand not in threat but greeting. "Elena," he called softly, voice carried by the wind. "You've been gone long enough." Evan leveled his gun. "Get back inside." Marco's eyes found his, cold and sharp. "You should have left her alone, Marshall." Evan took a step forward. "You're not taking her." Marco smiled faintly. "She was never yours to protect." The storm broke open, thunder rolling through the mountains. Elena's hands trembled, torn between the man who once made her feel safe and the one who now made her feel seen. And in that frozen heartbeat of indecision, Marco whispered through the rain soft, almost tender, "Tell him the truth, mi amor. Tell him what you took from me." Her lips parted, eyes wide with shock. Evan turned to her slowly. "What is he talking about?" She said nothing. Couldn't, because deep inside her bag buried beneath cash and false IDs was a small flash drive wrapped in cloth. A flash drive she'd sworn never to open. Flash drive that carried the secret capable of destroying them all. The cabin trembled with thunder. The storm outside felt alive, like it was watching, waiting. Evan's gun remained steady, pointed toward the shadow of Marco Viga standing at the tree line, while Elena stood frozen between them, rain streaking down her face. Her heart felt like it was being split in two. "Tell him, Elena." Marco's voice carried through the storm, steady, hypnotic. "Tell him what you took from me." Evan's voice was cold and sharp. "Don't listen to him." But she couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The past and the present were colliding right there in the flickering lightning. Marco's eyes found hers through the downpour, dark, magnetic, burning with something between fury and heartbreak. "Elena," Evan said again, louder now. "What is he talking about?" The wind howled through the trees. She finally whispered, "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," he demanded. Her voice broke. "I can't." A flicker of something passed over Evan's face, pain, anger, maybe both. He glanced between her and Marco. "You can't, or you won't." Marco took a slow step forward, rain sliding off his coat. "She can't because she made a promise." "To me," Evan raised his gun higher. "Another step and I swear to God." Marco stopped, hands slightly raised, calm as ever. "If you wanted to shoot, Marshall, you would have done it already." Lightning cracked overhead. For a second, the world went white, and in that flash, the truth in Elena's bag felt heavier than ever. The flash drive. The one she'd hidden the night she ran. The one containing everything Marco had once trusted her with. "Elena," Marco called softly. "You think you understand what's on that drive, but you don't. Give it back, and this ends. You have my word." She laughed through the tears, broken and bitter. "Your word. You killed Caleb Cole." For the first time, something shifted in his expression. He looked directly at Evan. "Your brother was a liar," he said. "He tried to destroy everything I built." Evan stepped forward. "You murdered him." Marco didn't flinch. "He made choices." "So did I." The two men stood in the storm, like two wolves circling each other, both broken by the same woman standing between them. "Elena," Evan said, eyes still on Marco. "Get inside, now." But she didn't move. Instead, she turned toward him, voice trembling. "If I give it to him, will he stop?" Evan looked at her, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "You can't be serious." "He'll never stop otherwise," she cried. "You don't know him like I do. He'll burn the whole country down to find me." Evan took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You think he's here for a piece of hardware? He's here for you." She shook her head. "You don't understand. What's on that drive? It's not just money. It's names, judges, politicians, his entire operation. If it ever surfaces, half the Southwest goes down with him." Evan froze. "You knew?" Tears blurred her vision. "I didn't at first. He told me it was for charity records. When I found out, I tried to destroy it. But I couldn't. Something in me thought maybe I could use it one day. To make it right." Evan's expression hardened. "And that's why you ran." She nodded, trembling. "And now he wants it back." Thunder cracked again, echoing off the mountains. Marco stepped closer, his voice cutting through the rain. "You were supposed to give it to Rourke." Evan blinked. "Rourke?" Marco's eyes shifted toward him. "He was my insurance policy. He takes the drive, disappears, and Elena stays alive, but you interfered." Evan's blood ran cold. Rourke's D. Marco gave a faint, cruel smile. And who do you think funds half the D in the Southwest? Evan's grip tightened on the gun. You're lying. Marco asked softly. Ask yourself why Rourke found you so fast. Why he knew exactly where you'd run. Evan's chest burned with rage. The pieces were falling into place, ugly and real. Rourke had led them right into Viga's trap. Elena's eyes darted between them. Stop! Please, none of this matters. Just take it and leave us alone. She reached for the bag, pulling out the small cloth-wrapped drive. Evan lunged forward. Elena, no! She stepped back, clutching it to her chest. If I don't give it to him, he'll kill you. He'll kill everyone. Don't you see? Evan said, voice breaking. That's exactly what he wants. You hand it over and you lose any leverage you have. You think he'll let you live after that? Marco's tone turned soft, almost tender. She knows I would. Evan glared. She doesn't know anything about you. Marco's voice darkened. She knows enough. Lightning flared again, illuminating the scar across his jaw, the one she'd stitched the night they met. That same night, she had whispered that he could still choose a different life. He had smiled and said, some of us were born too deep in the dark. Now, years later, that darkness had found her again. Elena, Marco said, his voice almost pleading. Give me the drive, then we disappear. Just you and me. No more running, she hesitated. The wind tore at her hair, the rain stinging her skin. Evan's eyes met hers, filled not with anger, but something raw. Elena, he said softly. You don't owe him your life. Her lips trembled. And what if I owe him my death? Evan's voice cracked. Don't say that. Behind them, the rumble of an engine echoed through the valley. Headlights pierced the storm. Evan turned sharply. We're not alone. Another car, black, familiar. Rourke stepped out. He held his gun low, his badge glinting under the rain. Enough of this. His voice was calm, controlled. Viga, you got what you wanted. She's here. Now hand it over. Marco laughed quietly. You're late, Agent. Evan raised his weapon again, shifting between them. Everyone back off! Rourke ignored him, eyes on Elena. Give me the drive, Miss Hart. You can't trust either of these men. Viga will kill you, and Cole will lock you in a witness box until you rot. I'm your only way out. The three men formed a jagged triangle around her, each one a different version of danger. Elena's breath came fast, shallow. The drive felt heavy in her palm, like it had a pulse. Evan's voice cut through the rain. Elena, look at me, she did. His eyes were fierce, but not with control, with care. Real broken care. You get to choose how this ends, he said. Not them. Not him. You. She looked from Evan to Rourke. To Marco. Then something inside her broke. With a cry, she threw the flash drive into the fire pit beside the porch. It hit the stone and slid into the flames, sizzling as the heat devoured it. Marco's eyes went wide. No, he lunged forward, but Evan fired. No, he lunged forward, but Evan fired. The bullet struck the ground inches from Marco's feet, the gunshot splitting the night. Stay back, Evan shouted. Rourke raised his gun too, shouting something lost to the wind. Then chaos erupted, shouts, thunder, flashes of light and sound. Marco's men poured from the trees, silhouettes moving like ghosts through the storm. Evan pulled Elena down behind the porch railing. Run! I can't leave you. Go! Bullets tore through the cabin walls. The smell of gunpowder filled the rain. Elena crawled toward the trees, heart pounding. Behind her, she heard Evan fire again and again until the sound was drowned by the roar of thunder. She ran through mud, through rain, through darkness. The drive was gone. Everything was gone. But for the first time, she felt free, not safe, but unbound. When she finally stopped, miles from the cabin, the storm had passed. Smoke rose from the hills behind her. She turned back once, eyes wet, and whispered into the empty night. Evan. Somewhere far behind her, another voice low, broken answered softly through the wind. Elena. She froze, because that voice didn't belong to Evan. It was Marco. Still alive. Dawn bled over the desert, pale and cold. Smoke still rose from the direction of the cabin, curling into the morning sky like the memory of fire. The air smelled of ash and rain and something metallic, gunpowder, blood, or both. Elena walked alone along the empty highway, her jeans soaked, her arms wrapped around herself. Each step echoed the same silent question: who's left? Her body ached, but it was her heart that felt ruined, like something torn too many times to ever be stitched back together. She didn't know how long she'd been walking before she heard it, the low hum of an approaching engine. She spun, pulse racing, but didn't run. Not this time. A black truck slowed beside her. The driver's window rolled down, and a man's voice, hoarse, cautious, called out, "Elena." Her knees nearly gave out. "Evan?" He stepped out, his arm wrapped in a blood-soaked bandage, his face streaked with soot. His eyes sharp, haunted, human found hers, and for the first time in months, she let herself cry. She ran to him, the weight of everything collapsing at once. He caught her, pulling her close despite the pain. "You're alive," she breathed. "So are you," he murmured, voice cracking. For a long moment, they just stood there, two ghosts who had somehow survived the fire. When she finally pulled back, she whispered, "Marco." "Did he?" Evan shook his head slowly. "He got away. Rourke's dead, the others scattered. I barely made it out." Her stomach twisted. "He's still out there." Evan met her gaze, weary but certain. "Yeah, but so are we." They drove north in silence through the endless desert plains of northern New Mexico, until the mountains rose around them like silent witnesses. Evan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Elena kept glancing at his bandaged arm, guilt clawing at her chest. "I shouldn't have thrown it," she said quietly. "The drive. If I'd given it to you, maybe we could have—" He cut her off gently. "You did the right thing." Her voice broke. "Did I? Because people died." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "People always die when truth comes out. Doesn't mean you should have kept it buried." She looked out the window. The rising sun caught on the peaks, painting them gold. "So what now?" Evan hesitated. "Now we disappear." But Elena wasn't listening. Something about the sunlight, bright and merciless, brought the memory back. Marco's last words, whispered through the storm, "Tell him the truth." She turned to Evan, her voice trembling. "There's something else. Something I didn't tell you." He gave a tired half smile. "At this point, I'm not sure I can handle another secret. It's not about the drive." She swallowed hard. "It's about Caleb." The name hit him like a slap. His eyes narrowed. "What about my brother?" Elena's hands twisted in her lap. "Marco didn't kill him." Evan went still. "Don't." "I saw it, Evan. I saw the video." "Yes, but not all of it. There was more." "Marco sent me a second recording months later before I ran." Her eyes filled with tears. "Caleb wasn't dead." "Not then." He stared at her, disbelief warring with something more dangerous hope. "You're saying he survived?" She nodded. "Marco kept him alive. Used him. Caleb helped encrypt the files on the drive. He was the one who hid the names." Evan's breath came shallow. "You mean my brother worked for Vega again?" "He didn't have a choice," she said. "He was a prisoner. And when he realized I had the drive, he sent me a message. A single line, 'Don't give it back to him. Finish what I couldn't.'" Evan's hands trembled against the wheel. "You should have told me." "I know." He looked at her, eyes wet with fury and grief. "You let me believe he was dead." Her voice broke. "I didn't know how to tell you without destroying what little hope you had left." The car rolled to a stop on the side of the road. The mountains loomed around them, the wind whispering through the pines. Evan stepped out, pacing, hands in his hair. "Jesus, Elena." She followed him out. "Evan, please." He turned sharply, voice cracking. "You kept the one thing that mattered most. My brother." "My blood." Tears streamed down her face. "Because if you'd gone after him, you'd be dead too." He looked away, jaw tight, fighting something inside him. Then, through the quiet, a faint sound. Another car. Distant at first, then closer. Evan froze, eyes narrowing down the road. A dark SUV. Elena's stomach dropped. "It's him." Evan reached for his gun, wincing at the pain in his arm. "Get behind the truck." The SUV slowed, pulling to a stop 20 yards away. The driver's door opened. Marco Vega stepped out. But something was different this time. His face was pale, drawn. His right arm hung stiffly at his side, bandaged. "Elena," he called, voice hoarse but steady. "You burned the drive." But you didn't burn the truth. Evan raised his weapon. You've got 3 seconds to turn around. Marco ignored him. You want to know the truth, Marshall? Ask her about Caleb. Evan's pulse roared in his ears. I already did. Marco's smile was faint, almost mournful. Then you know he's not dead. Evan's grip tightened. Where is he? Closer than you think. Lightning cracked somewhere behind the mountains. The air turned electric again. Elena's breath hitched as Marco reached into his coat. Evan raised his gun ready to shoot, but Marco pulled out a small phone instead. He tossed it into the dirt between them. Press play. He said. Evan hesitated, then knelt, pressing the button. The screen flickered. A dim room appeared. A man sat in a chair, thin, bruised, but alive. Evan. The voice was weak, but unmistakable. Caleb. If you're watching this, it means he let me go. Evan's throat closed. I made my choice, Caleb said on the screen. I stayed behind to make sure Viga's network burned from the inside. But if you're still chasing him, stop. He's not the monster you think. He saved me twice. The video ended. For a moment, the world was utterly silent. Evan looked up slowly. Marco stood still, rain beginning to fall again. I didn't kill him, Marco said quietly. I gave him a chance to make things right. Elena's voice trembled. Why are you telling us this now? Because, Marco said, eyes on her, I'm dying. The words hit like a shockwave. He pulled aside his coat, revealing a blood-soaked shirt. The bandage beneath it was dark and spreading fast. One of Rourke's men hit me before the fire, he said. I don't have long. Evan lowered his gun slowly. You came here to die. Marco's gaze softened. I came to finish it. He looked at Elena. You were supposed to save lives, Miamor. Not destroy them. Don't let this follow you anymore. He took one step forward, unarmed now, rain glistening on his face. There's a USB in my jacket pocket. Everything that was on the drive, it's all there. The real files. Caleb's last message. Give it to someone who still believes in justice. Elena's tears mixed with the rain. Marco, he smiled faintly. You saved me once. Now I'm saving you. And then his legs gave out. Evan caught him before he hit the ground, lowering him gently. Marco's eyes found Elena's one last time. Don't disappear again, he whispered. Then he was gone. The storm finally broke apart. Sunlight slicing through the clouds. Elena knelt beside him, her fingers trembling as she reached into his jacket and pulled out the small black USB drive. Evan stood over her, silent. The anger in his eyes had faded, replaced by something heavier: acceptance. What are you going to do with it? He asked quietly. She stared at the drive, the morning light reflecting off its surface. Give it to someone who won't sell it. He nodded slowly. And you? Elena looked toward the horizon, the endless stretch of road winding north into nowhere. I don't know. Maybe this time I'll stop running. Evan looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, If you need a place to start, I know a quiet town in Colorado. No cartel, no ghosts. She smiled through her tears. Is that an invitation? He half smiled back. Call it protection. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant pine. The world felt clean again, if only for a moment. As they drove away. The rising sun glowed in the rearview mirror. Catching on the still body they left behind. Marco Vega had found her in the end, but not to reclaim her. To free her. And in that strange, fragile morning light, Elena finally understood what redemption meant. It wasn't surviving. It was forgiving yourself for the lives you couldn't save.